For the first 5 years of their existence, the Baltimore Colts had never made the playoffs and had never won the title. Heck, professional football in Baltimore was in a dire spot, where their fans truly had no idea what success looked like. From 1947 to 50, the Colts went a combined 11-40-1, including just 2 wins across their final 2 seasons, with the team contracting after the 1950 campaign. Then, when a brand new Colts team, technically speaking, started play in Baltimore in 1953, they were still not good. Yes, things were improving after the 1957 season, as the team went 7-5, making it the first time ever that a Baltimore team finished with a winning record in the NFL. But the season ended on a sour note, as the Colts, despite having a 1-game lead on the conference title with 2 games to play, lost their final 2 games and missed the playoffs entirely. This is all to say that the mantra, "act like you've been there before," didn't really apply to Baltimore fans, because they truly had never been there before. Their baseball team, the Orioles, had never finished with a winning record since moving to Baltimore, let alone made the playoffs or the World Series. And their football team hadn't done much of anything either. But it looked like in 1958, as you can tell from these highlights, everything was about to change. And Baltimore was about to experience what life was like as a winner. Because 9 weeks into the 1958 season, the Colts were on top of the NFL world, looking untouchable. The Colts sat atop the Western Conference with an 8-1 record, boasting the number 1 offense in the league, having scored 306 points, or 34 points per game, and having allowed just 125 points, or just under 14 points per game. The Colts had a point differential of plus 181, at a time when no other team was even at plus 75. The Colts had allowed 21 fewer points than the second best defense in the league, and had scored 46 more points than the second best offense in the league. We were looking at the 1958 Baltimore Colts, under the direction of head coach Weeb Ewbank, as quite possibly one of the greatest teams in the history of the NFL. As outside of one blemish to the New York Giants, they looked unstoppable, winning every game at home and having 7 of their 8 wins come by double digits. They had Johnny Unitas at quarterback, who was looking like the best signal caller in the league. They had Lenny Moore at running back, who was completely revolutionizing the way the game was played, with running backs being able to be utilized at receiver. They had the late great Raymond Berry at wide receiver, who was doing things we hadn't really seen at the position since Don Hudson. They had a whole host of defensive talent. This team was loaded, and now they were on the verge of bringing Baltimore a playoff appearance for the first time ever. For the Colts, they had a 2-game lead on the Chicago Bears in the Western Conference with 3 games to go. The Colts had one final home game left, which was this game right here. And this game came against the San Francisco 49ers, a 4-5 team with nothing to play for outside of pride, and a team that had lost 2 of its last 3 games and 5 of its last 8. If the Colts won this game as they were expected to, then they'd be guaranteed a playoff spot for the first time in franchise history. If the Colts won the game, and the Bears, who were playing earlier in the day against the Pittsburgh Steelers, lost their game, then the Colts would clinch the Western Conference title right then and there, and would punch their ticket into the NFL Championship against the winner of the Eastern Conference with 2 weeks to go in the regular season. Considering the stakes, and considering the fact that this was the final home game of the season for Baltimore, this was the biggest game in franchise history. And dare I say it, the biggest game in Baltimore professional sports history. Yes, I know the Baltimore Bullets won the BAA championship in 1948, but no offense, No one cared about pro basketball back then, and the league was an upstart league. Literally, here was the front page of the Baltimore Sun the day after their own team won the title, and there is not one mention of this. The Colts were massive. This game against the 49ers was massive. And remember what I said about acting like you've been there before, but not knowing how to, because you've truly never been there before? Yeah, Colts fans took that to a whole new level during this game right here against the 49ers. Because what followed was one of the craziest disasters in the history of Memorial Stadium that you probably never heard of before, that deserves a deep dive today, nearly 70 years later. Before I get into that, make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you've never heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. With that in mind, let's talk about the game, which was chaotic, and then let's talk about the fans, which were somehow even more chaotic. First, the game. The Colts needed to take care of business, and they were expected to take care of business, as they were heavy favorites according to Las Vegas, being favored by 13.5 points. Unfortunately for the Colts, it wasn't exactly the prettiest to start, as the 49ers jumped out to an early 7-0 lead and led 27-7 at the halftime break, thanks in part to a pick six and a strong ground game from Joe Perry, the future Hall of Fame running back who would finish the game with over 100 yards rushing. And this is where the first incident comes into play. And to say that Colts fans were not happy about the Colts' anemic efforts to start, sensing potential deja vu from their 1957 collapse, would be putting it lightly. Fortunately, one fan came prepared and decided that he had the answer to solving the Colts' slow start as the 49ers were driving down the field. Throw a freaking smoke bomb onto the playing field. If the Colts defense couldn't stop the 49ers from moving the ball down the field, maybe a literal smoke bomb will. Here's the bad news. There's no footage of the fan throwing the smoke bomb. Here's the good news. There is a photo of the smoke bomb. And this wasn't a shot that landed on the sidelines far away from the action. This was a shot that landed near the 15-yard line in the 49ers huddle. The Niners were lined up right around there in the red zone, and this fan delivered a perfect strike. I love how the caption to this says that the fan was zealous, and that the smoke gave a spectacular touch to the contest, as if this was like writing poetry and not describing a freaking crazy person who threw a smoke bomb onto the field. Apparently, back in the 1950s, you could just bring smoke bombs to stadiums. Security was non-existent, not just with checking people at the gate, but with enforcing punishment if you broke the law, because the person who threw the bomb was never caught. Despite the fact that this delayed the game for obvious reasons, security, somehow, couldn't identify the person who snuck a smoke bomb into a stadium and threw it into the Niners huddle. We're already off to a good start. But the only team having a worse performance to start the game than the Colts security guards were the Colts players, because at halftime, they trailed 27-7 and needed to string together some sort of rally to win this game and defend their home field and clinch a conference title, seeing as the Bears wound up losing to the Steelers. And sure enough, the Colts asserted their dominance, and in the second half, looked like the team that was running through the league all season. Future Hall of Fame quarterback Y.A. Tittle was on the opposite side for the Niners, and in the second half, the Colts gave him fits, as Tittle finished the game throwing no touchdowns and 5 interceptions, finishing with a passer rating of 29.7. which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Meanwhile, the offense finally got going, as the team scored 4 straight touchdowns to go from down 27-7 to up 35-27, winning the game by that score and officially winning the Western Conference, clinching their spot in the championship for the first time ever. But there was one touchdown in particular that led to, quite possibly, the most absurd thing I've ever seen a fan do at a game. And by God, I wish there was video of this, because this is something that could never happen today. And I had so many questions as to how this was even possible. To open up the fourth quarter, the Colts scored the second of their 4 second-half touchdowns, which made the game 27-21. This was a pretty normal touchdown. It was a goal line run. Now, most normal fans would celebrate this by jumping up and down, by yelling, by high-fiving the people around them, and by doing, normal fan behavior. But not this fan, who was somehow able to get through security and was not ejected or found during the game. When the Colts scored that touchdown, the fan, who was sitting at the top of the stadium, decided to throw his coat over his head. It was somewhere in the ballpark of 30 degrees. You can see footage during the game of people's breaths, so it was pretty cold. By throwing the coat over his head, because he was in the top row of the venue and there was literally nothing behind him, the coat fell out of the stadium. Okay, maybe that was a complete accident and just a complete spur-of-the-moment thing that he didn't even realize. Happens to the best of us. But nope, because then he tossed his blanket over his head and did the same exact thing, with the blanket falling out of the stadium over the top wall. Okay, maybe he wasn't cold for some reason, and he just discarded his personal belongings in the dumbest way possible. Or he was trying to throw his coat and his blanket over his shoulder and just completely missed because he had no aim whatsoever. But nope, because then, I kid you not, he took his freaking seat and tossed it out of the stadium. He was sitting on bleacher seats in the upper deck, so he decided that he was going to bring a chair into the stadium, which apparently that was allowed because it was the 1950s, and he threw the chair over the top of the stadium wall to celebrate the touchdown. Apparently, in the 1950s, you could bring a smoke bomb and a chair into the stadium. Screw the clear bag policy. This was security back in the good old days, apparently. Again, this fan was not caught, which, I don't know, you think it'd be pretty obvious to figure out the person who has no coat, no blanket, and who threw a chair hundreds of feet down. But I digress. I should also note that the fans stormed the field after the game, but that's the least surprising thing of all time, considering everything else I just said. That's like me saying a person went to prison after he shot someone and they got it all on camera, and he confessed. You knew that was gonna happen. The same security that allowed a smoke bomb into the venue didn't eject that person, and that allowed a chair into the venue and didn't eject the person that threw it out of the venue was not stopping people from rushing the field. Now you might be thinking, these people were really freaking drunk. I don't know what they blew on the breathalyzer, but they were clearly intoxicated. I can't even imagine how drunk these people were when they did this. And this was clearly alcohol-induced, more so than rowdy fans not knowing how to behave with their team being good for the first time ever. And to that I say that this game was played on a Sunday. Why do I bring this up? Because Baltimore had some of the strictest blue laws in the country. Until the Colts moved to Indianapolis, they had to play all of their home games at 2 o'clock or later. they were the only team that started past 1 o'clock, because city rules forbid anything from taking place before that. You could not sell alcohol in Baltimore on a Sunday. You couldn't drink alcohol in Baltimore on a Sunday. Heck, you needed a special exemption to do literally anything on a Sunday in Baltimore back in the day. And if you don't believe me, about a quarter century before this game, just to give you an idea of how strict Baltimore was with blue laws back then, a man got arrested because he was in his driveway and painted his car. Seriously, I wish I was making that up. A man in his own driveway decided to paint his car, and he got arrested for it. Obviously, regardless of whether you're tough on crime or believe in second chances, regardless of your political affiliation, I think we can all agree that such a heinous act should be punishable by death and the guillotine, and that Franklin R. Gundrum should have never been allowed to walk the streets of Freeman again after having the audacity to paint his car on his driveway on a Sunday. But yeah, you get the idea. Baltimore didn't mess around with blue laws. This was dry as dry could be. So the fans during this game weren't drunk. They were just freaking insane. So just to recap what happened in the stands during this game right here, that you've been watching this entire time, the game started with the fans being so frustrated that the Colts were struggling that one of them threw a smoke bomb into the 49ers huddle, delaying the action. Then the Colts came back, and the fans were so excited about this that one of them threw a jacket, blanket, and a literal chair over the top of the stadium, somehow not killing anyone in the process. Because I'm fairly confident if you get hit with a chair being dropped from hundreds of feet above, you're going to die. Security was so preoccupied with the game that no one got ejected or arrested or charged for any of this. And security just allowed everyone to bring anything they wanted into the venue and do whatever they wanted while inside the venue. And when the Colts won the game, the fans were so excited that they stormed the field, which is honestly just a footnote at this point compared to the literal smoke bomb and the flying chair. Thank God that the 1958 NFL Championship, which was won by the Colts, was held at Yankee Stadium, because Memorial Stadium might have burned to the ground if the game was in Baltimore based on how this entire situation was handled. Because on this day in 1958, thanks to a smoke bomb and a chair, after their win, the Colts players weren't the only ones flying high. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.